Her voice cracked under the weight of the Arizona heat, barely a whisper, barely anything at all. "Please don't look at me." She was face down in the dirt, dress torn, back rising and falling just enough to say she was still holding on. The sun hammered down without mercy, turning every wound into something that burned twice over. A shadow fell across her, tall, unmoving, blocking the worst of the glare. Boots came to rest just inches from her outstretched fingers. She tried to pull herself forward. Her hands only scraped shallow grooves into the cracked earth. "Please," she breathed again, pressing her face deeper into the ground, as if disappearing into the dust might erase what had already happened. The man above her said nothing. He simply stood there, perfectly still, like a man who was making a calculation no one else could see. From the outside, it looked like the worst kind of scene a woman could land. In, alone, shattered, completely, at the mercy of a stranger who hadn't shown his hand yet. The wind moved slow and dry across the open stretch between Tucson and Benson, the kind of wind that carries stories nobody ever repeats at a dinner table. Jackson Harlan had seen 49 years of those kinds of stories. He knew exactly how most of them ended. Man comes across a woman like this, and she vanishes from the world without a sound. He shifted his weight. The shadow moved across her back. She flinched, a tiny, instinctive thing, and that small motion told him everything words couldn't. Jack's jaw went tight. He could walk. Nothing out here would stop him. He could leave her to the heat, to the silence, to whatever came riding down that road next. Or he could do exactly what every soul within a day's ride already assumed he'd do, because Jackson Harlan wasn't known for kindness in any of those towns. He was known as a man who operated by his own code and never felt the need to explain himself afterward. Slowly, he reached up and pulled the red bandana from around his neck. For one long second, the motion looked like something else entirely, something that would have confirmed every dark whisper ever spoken about him. The girl shut her eyes. Her whole body locked up, waiting for the worst. Jack moved closer. Then he knelt, and instead of what she feared, he draped that cloth gently over the back of her head, shielding her from the sun. Shielding her from his eyes. He turned his face away. Gave her that much. Then, without a single word, he slipped one arm beneath her shoulders and the other under her legs and lifted her clean off the ground. She didn't resist. She didn't have anything left for that. Only a faint trembling moved through her as she let herself be carried. Jack placed her carefully across his horse, then swung up behind her and clicked the animal into a walk. By the time anyone else caught wind of it, the story would already be unrecognizable. A ruined girl. A feared rancher. A long ride toward somewhere no one else could see, and out in Arizona territory in that scorched summer of 1886. People had never been in the habit of waiting for the truth before deciding what they believed. So the real question wasn't what Jackson Harlan had done out on that road. The question was simple. When a man that everyone feared carried a helpless woman away from the open desert, what exactly did he intend to do once the world stopped watching? Jack didn't push the horse. Speed out here bred errors, and errors had a way of becoming graves. He kept a measured pace, one hand on the reins, the other steadying the girl so she didn't slide. She never spoke, never lifted her head. She simply lay still in that red cloth, drawing thin. Careful breaths, like even air, felt dangerous. His ranch sat a few miles off the San Pedro River. Nothing built to impress, just a house, a barn, and land that spread out farther than most men had the patience to work. When he finally rode in, the place looked the same as it always did. He stepped down first, then lifted her again with the same unhurried care and carried her inside to the small room off the side of the house, the one with the clean bed and the window that caught the light just right in the evenings. He set her down, stepped back, stood there a moment, not staring, just making sure she was still breathing. Then he walked out. Left the door wide open. Didn't say a word. An hour later, he was on horseback again, this time heading down the trail to a smaller place he knew well. Martha Quinn had the door open before his boots hit the porch steps. She was the kind of woman the territory quietly depended on, widowed, sharp-eyed, and nearly impossible to rattle. "Trouble find you again, Jack?" she asked. He shook his head once. "Trouble found the road," he said. That was enough for Martha. She gathered her things without another question and rode back with him. The girl was exactly where he'd left her. Martha stepped into the room, took one long look, and her expression didn't collapse into shock. It settled into something older than that, a tired recognition, the face of someone who had seen this kind of damage before and knew there was nothing to do but get to work. She cleaned the wounds, wrapped what needed wrapping, spoken low, even tones that didn't push or pull, just held steady. Jack sat on the porch outside, hat low, hands resting on his knees. Through the wall, he could hear small sounds, water moving in a basin, cloth shifting, an occasional breath that caught and then released. Nothing more. The sun eased down. Shadows stretched long across the yard. After a while, Martha came out and let the door rest closed behind her. "She's young," she said. Jack said nothing. "Seen more than a young person ought to," Martha added. Then she looked at him squarely. "Who is she?" Jack didn't answer right away, because he already had a feeling he knew. Back on that road, just before the girl had gone still again, she had said something, quiet enough that most men would have missed it entirely. A name, not her own, someone she was terrified of. Jack looked out at the empty land, jaw tight, because if that name was the one he suspected, this wasn't simply a girl he'd pulled from the dust. This was a problem that had roots running straight into Tucson. 2 days passed. Elena, that was her name, what Martha had learned, was still weak. But the fear living in her eyes had started shifting into something different, something that hadn't been there before. On the third morning, the trouble Jack had been expecting came riding down his trail. He heard it before he saw it, hooves, more than one horse, moving with purpose. He stood still and listened. 3, maybe 4 riders, enough to mean a statement was being made. Inside, Elena heard it too. Her body understood before her mind could name it. She already knew who it was. Jack stepped out into the open yard as the riders came into view. Tom Varela led them in. Clean shirt, easy posture, the face of a man who had never needed to rush because he always knew how things would end. 3 men followed behind. The quiet kind, the kind that didn't need instructions. Tom brought his horse to a slow stop. "Morning," he said pleasantly. Jack didn't answer. Tom let his eyes drift around the property, the way a man does when he's already decided he owns something. Then his gaze came back. "My daughter is here," he said, not asking, claiming. Inside, Elena's hands started shaking. She hadn't heard that voice in a long time without pain attached to it. Martha placed a firm, steady hand on her shoulder. "You stay right where you are," Martha said quietly. Outside, Jack finally spoke. "She's not leaving." Tom smiled, the kind that stops at the cheekbones. "That's not a decision that belongs to you," he said. A small nod. That was the signal. The first man stepped down from his horse and moved toward the house like the matter was already settled. He didn't make it 3 strides. Jack caught him clean and sent him hard into the water trough. The second came in with more intent. A fist connected with Jack's jaw, solid with real weight behind it. He tasted blood. He didn't go down. Inside, Elena heard it all. And something inside her shifted. She was done being still. She moved to the back door as the third man tried to come around. His hand caught the edge of the doorframe. She pushed with everything she had. The door held. Outside, it ended almost as fast as it started. Tom raised one hand. His men pulled back. He regarded Jack for a long, quiet moment, something different in his eyes now. Calculating. "You've made this larger than it had to be," Tom said, his voice soft. Jack didn't blink. Wasn't small to start with. Tom turned his horse, unhurried. "I'll return," he said. "And when I do, I won't be coming as a father." The riders left in a slow rise of dust. The yard went silent. But it wasn't the same silence as before. Jack didn't sit and wait for the next move. Men like Tom Varela never repeated the same approach twice. By late afternoon, he was saddling up again. Martha watched from the porch. "You're not the type to just sit here," she said. It wasn't really a question. Jack pulled the cinch strap snug. "Waiting puts people in the ground," he said. From inside the house, Elena had heard every word. She stepped out, still moving carefully, still not fully herself, but different, steadier, not the girl from the road. "You're going to Tucson," she said. Jack nodded once. "That's where this gets finished." Elena shook her head. "No," she said. "That's where it started." He looked at her then. Really looked. She stepped closer without wavering. "My father doesn't just frighten people," she said. "He owns pieces of them. Men who owe him money. Others who owe him silence. Some of them carry badges," she paused. "And some of those badges don't mean anything honest." That settled over Jack like cold water. "I know where he keeps it," Elena said. "Ledgers, names, every arrangement he never wanted daylight on." Jack studied her for a moment. "You're not strong enough for this yet," he said. Elena met his gaze and held it. "I was strong enough to run," she said. "And I'm finished running." That was the moment. Nothing dramatic about it. Just a clear, unmistakable line drawn in the dust. Jack gave one slow nod. "Then we don't move fast," he said. "We move right." Martha took over the house without being asked. Before the sun finished dropping, Jack and Elena were already on the trail. What Jack didn't yet know, Tom had kept men watching the ranch from a distance. The second they rode out, a rider was already cutting ahead of them toward town. The ride to Tucson passed mostly in silence, just hoofbeats and the weight of what was waiting at the other end. The town appeared gradually in the distance, lights scattered low against the dark like embers. They circled wide, coming in from behind, through the alley where stables met the backs of saloons and the smell of hay covered everything else. Elena led now. She knew which door dragged, which board in the hallway announced your wait, which room her father kept locked tight. The building was darker than she remembered. Or maybe she just felt it differently now. Jack moved close behind her, eyes working the shadows. Elena stopped at the back office door. Her hand rested on the handle. The fear came back, old, familiar, heavy. Then she pushed the door open. Inside, a plain desk, a locked drawer, and everything needed to bring Tom Varela to his knees. Jack stepped in behind her. Then a floorboard spoke, not under either of them. Jack turned. Not fast enough to hide. Not slow enough to miss what was coming. A voice came out of the darkness behind them. "You should have stayed in that road, girl." They were not alone. Jack didn't go for his gun first. He stepped forward, measured, deliberate, like a man who had already made his decision before the moment arrived. Tom Varela filled the doorway, half in shadow, half lit by a distant lamp. Wearing a smile that had lived too long on his face to mean anything real. "You honestly believed you could take something from me," Tom said. Jack didn't argue, he moved. A man came in from the side. Jack drove him into the wall with no wasted motion. Another reached for iron. Elena didn't freeze. She snatched the ledger from the desk and stepped back, holding it the way you hold something irreplaceable, because it was. That book was truth made physical. Names, arrangements, private dealings written too plainly to twist into something innocent. Tom saw it. For the first time, his expression cracked. Not into rage, into fear, Jack noticed. And he stopped, right there, one step from finishing this the way most men would have. But he wasn't most men. A dead man can't be held accountable. A dead man never has to face what he's done in the light. So Jack didn't pull the trigger. He took Tom by the collar and hauled him outside into the open air. Into the kind of exposure that a man like Tom Varela had spent a lifetime engineering around. By morning, the town knew. People gathered as the Arizona sun climbed hard and white above the rooftops. They saw the ledger. They heard the names read aloud. Not everyone looked comfortable. Men who had profited from Tom's arrangements kept their eyes low and their mouths shut. And they watched a man who had trafficked in fear for years stand before them with nothing left to stand behind. But perhaps the thing that stunned people most wasn't Tom's fall. It was Jack Harlan, the man half the territory had crossed the street to avoid, standing there as the one who had dragged the truth into daylight. A man they had feared. A man they had kept their distance from. A man they had never once called good. Elena stood beside him. Not a step behind. Not tucked away. Beside him. Steady in the morning light, no longer hunched against the world, no longer waiting for the next blow. Jack looked over at her. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, something inside him sat down and rested. She didn't need to run anymore. Neither of them looked away. Let me say this, just between us. The world will tell you, more times than you can count, to look the other way. Mind your own. Stay Stay clear of other people's trouble. And sometimes maybe that's wisdom. But every once in a while, doing the right thing means walking straight into the fire you were told to walk around. Jack Harlan could have kept moving that afternoon on the open road. He had every reason to. Nobody would have known. Nobody would have blamed him. He didn't keep moving. And that changed everything that came after. So here's the question worth sitting with tonight. When life sets something broken right in your path, do you step around it or do you stop and change the ending? If this story reached you somewhere real, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. It takes 1 second and it keeps stories like this one coming. And I want to know, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you listening from? This story was shaped and retold to bring forward the lesson living at its center. Some visuals were created to give the words a little more feeling. If it's not your kind of story, that's perfectly all right. Rest well tonight and take good care of yourself. But if it stayed with you, and leave a comment and let me know. I'll keep bringing you stories worth slowing down for.